Welcome back, everybody, to RAVENSTA'S Witching Hour. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven. My wonderful guest tonight is Jeff Woolwine. We're discussing his book, Petroglyphs in the Sky, available on Amazon.com. And once again, Jeff, you were discussing blood sacrifice and some other details. Before we hit the break, you want to continue on with that?
Yes, and so all this information, is verifiable in the Phoenix Library. You want to go to the Arizona room and just look for the documents on South Mountain. I think 1967 and older, I think, is the folder name. And they'll bring you all this information. And this folder is talking about who the holocron was through the first park ranger, Charles Holbrook, and what happened to him and what the Phoenix Lights really is. And so when it all dried up here in the Valley of the Sun, when all the water stopped flowing and things drying up, that's when it upset all these spirits in the sky. And they came down and they started taking people away. And there were some that were witness to this. They were afraid. They hid in caves. And they watched what was going on. They were terrifying. I think it's interesting, too. Now, in some of these biblical scrolls, it says that we will be caught up in the air. A lot of these preachers, they want to say, oh, this is the rapture, right? First Thessalonians, and it says that we will be caught up in the air, right? Well, when I read this, and I'm reading this from Charles Holbrook, when he's saying what happened to the holocron, and when some of these other Native Americans are telling me about, these things coming out of the sky and taking people up into the sky, I'm thinking to myself, is this like another rapture? Is this what happened to the holocron? Were they raptured up, dude? Because that's exactly what it's describing here, and that's what the prehistoric photograph is talking about. These carvings, these petroglyphs, this is evidence. This is prehistoric photographic evidence of what happened here in Phoenix, Arizona. It's carved all over the mountains of the valley. It's like a sacred scroll. It's one huge scroll full of all this art, and it's photographs of what a lot of these ancient scrolls are talking about, especially when we come to the Anunnaki and some of these Babylonian scrolls and some of these scrolls that we find, that has been turned into the Bible. Now, I'm not talking about religion here. Let's not talk about religion. Let's talk about these scrolls that talk about these things that we see in the sky. And when you do that, when you look at it that way, it explains everything. When you read these scrolls and when you go out to the rocks and you can see the photographs of what the scrolls are talking about, that is what I'm talking about when it comes to credible evidence, verifiable evidence. This is not hearsay. And what about Charles Holbrook? What does he have to gain about telling the story? Nothing. He was in charge of protecting these tombs out here. Let's get back to it. So these people, they're seeing these things they're seeing this, what's going on here, and they were afraid to hide in the caves. And when it was all over with, they knew that if they were going to continue to live in this Valley of the Sun, that eventually they would have to go back to war with these spirits of the earth and sky. So they gathered up all their gold. And Charles Holbrook writing says the gold was as tall as the tallest saguaro cactus and as round as the sun in the sky. This was a lot of gold, and they buried it in the tombs on South Mountain and other tombs around the Valley of the Sun. And they vowed never to come back to this valley. They cursed this valley. They put a curse on this valley. No one was going to live here no more, because this is where the spirits reside at. This is where the spirits live. And because they knew what happened to the people last time they dealt with it, And so they all took off back to the homeland, back to Mexico. They stopped off at Casa Grande, and they taught the people there at Casa Grande how to build canals, and they stayed there for like maybe a year or so, but they didn't stay. They continued to move on. So for 400 years, nobody lived in this desert. The archaeologist wants us to believe, well, they just simply migrated somewhere else. They moved on. Well, when me and you move, we take our belongings with us. But yet the holocaust didn't. They left everything behind and simply vanished off the face of the earth.
Yep.
This is the reason why we still can find their pots. You know, when the first pilgrims came back around, you know, to start this land over again, you know, they found evidence of the form of civilization. You know, for 400 years, nobody lived here. There are tribes on the outskirts of this valley. They were watching. They saw the phoenix light. They saw the flying serpent. They saw Quetzalcoatl. They saw these orbs in the sky. They saw these shapeshifters coming down and shape-shifting into like animals and men and people, and it was crazy. And they were afraid, and rightly they should be, because they knew what had happened last time they lived in that valley. So nobody lived here for 400 years until Jack Swelling came around, him and his army, and he looked down across the mountains of the White Pink Mountains, and he said, "Oh, what a great farmland! Look, the people left us canals here for the water. Look at the farmland. This. We can build a farm here. We can start living here again." And Jack Swelling was the one who started building on the former ashes of the civilization who is gone now. And so this is when this fiery bird rose up out of the ashes from the former civilization, and now we call it the phoenix. And this is exactly how Phoenix was born. Phoenix rose from the former ashes of the former civilization, but they failed to tell you. They don't want to tell you what this civilization was all about. But the rocks tell you, the prehistoric photographs tell you, the mountains talk to you. They tell you what happened to these people. They tell you, look, there's giants here. Look what that giant did over there. He broke up a big, huge boulder, and he placed it on that other boulder, and they built all these tombs, and they got this huge boulder, and they put it there. Look what they did. The mountains are telling us, man. The petroglyphs are telling us, man, look, this is where the history lies at. And I'm sorry, it's not all fun and games. It's not, they're going to cure cancer and they're going to stop the global war and all this stuff. No, man, it's the complete opposite, dude. That's the whole reason why this government is not telling us about these things. They know what's going on here, man. They've been watching it a lot longer than we've been alive, dude. They knew about this. Matter of fact, President Roosevelt was the first one to actually look at this seriously. And during the Depression, he organized these bunch of young men called the CCC, the Central. Can't remember the name now. Central. I can't remember the name, but it was a bunch of young men, the Civil Conservation Corps. That's it. And so this was during the Depression, and so they hired a bunch of young men to live on South Mountain, about 200 or 300 people. And they went up there supposedly to clean up the park. Why would you want to clean up the park? Well, because the CCC was there blowing up petroglyphs. Because it was his wife. He sent his wife out to go check out the land, because we all know now, we didn't back then, that he was in a wheelchair and he couldn't get around. So he sent his wife out to explore what these Native Americans are saying about this land that he's president on now. And when she came back with some crazy stories, man, of demonic creatures, of sacrifice, of stuff that we're hearing in Mexico, right? And he didn't feel that this was, the right place to start the new civilization. He didn't feel that, demonic creatures carved on walls, man, isn't really family friendly, dude. So part of the New Deal, he hired these people, because everybody needed a job, to go in there and blow up petroglyphs. They blew up petroglyphs. They created new trails. They dug some mines. There's lots of mines on South Mountain. They pulled about $60,000 worth of gold and silver and other precious metal out of South Mountain. And this went on for, 3 or 4 years. And they were destroying petroglyphs. It really pissed me off, because it made me wonder. I didn't find all this information out until I went to the library. And this is what Charles Holbrook is telling me from his writings. And it was a CCC that went in here and blew up all the petroglyphs, right? And then they started building ramadas and fireplaces and swing sets for the kiddies, and they wanted to make a family park. And like I said before, I mean, demonic creatures taking humans up into the sky isn't really family-oriented. So they had to get rid of this information, and that's exactly what they did. They blew up a lot of petroglyphs, especially the ones where they're accessible. But once you get up higher on the mountain, that's when the story really comes into play, because they don't think that anyone's going to grow that high. Well, little old me did. Little old me bringing down this information from the mountain. You know, I'm bringing down these sacred scrolls, man, from the mountain. I'm bringing down these photographs. Here's the history. This is what it all says.
That's fascinating. Go ahead.
And you know, once I found all this, and I can prove it, right? I proved it with the petroglyphs. I was the first one to match these entities in the sky, you know, with these carvings on the rocks. Matter of fact, you know, the 1997 Phoenix Light spread, I found that petroglyph. You know, I found another petroglyph with a crooked snake in the sky. About a few weeks later, I filmed the same crooked snake in the sky. You know, and this was in 2005. That's why I took this stuff to the news. You know, everything was being credible. I was backing up everything I was saying. And so I'm doing cable shows. I did an article for UFO Magazine. I did the pilot for the UFO Hunter Show in 2005. Then later, 2007, I did the show on the History Channel. From there, I went on to do True TV. I've done Jaime Maussan plenty of times. I'm doing radio shows, you know, but I'm saying something different, right? Matter of fact, when the History Channel came out, I took them out to the White Tank Mountains because it's a little bit better scenery out there, and it's a little bit better petroglyphs. The petroglyphs really aren't disturbed as much as we are in South Mountain. Plus, it's just a better landscape for the show. And they're telling me, dude, when you talk about these things, you have to stay craft. This is in 2007. They're telling me, dude, you're filming some bizarre stuff, and the public is not ready for this information. Boy, I was pissed, you know, because, look, I have discovered this. You know, no one else in the history, you know, has come up with this idea and has all this evidence to prove it. Look, this is not a spaceship. This is a craft. These are living entities. This is not a craft. You know, sure, it's possible. Don't get me wrong. Don't think that I don't believe in spaceships and crafts. Sure, why not? You know, the scientists have already found 7 Earth-like planets on the outskirts of our solar system. And what's to say there's some advanced civilization there who has built these mechanical crafts and visited Earth from time to time? Sure, I get it. I'm open to that. But I can't find any proof. Okay? Until proof comes forward, you know, we're going to have to go what we can verify. And what can we verify? We know the lights are in the sky. We know these orbs are in the sky. We know that the petroglyphs on the mountains is talking about these orbs and things that we see in the skies today. This rock art is talking about our generation. It's meant for us to understand. It's our time. Because history has a tendency to repeat itself, right? And so look at the history. Here's the whole conclusion of this all. Look at the history. When the Holocaust first got here, they didn't know how to live. So these things came out of the heavens, came up out of the ground, and they taught these people how to live. In return, they treated them as God. This is the reason why they're not making contact with us today. They're simply watching. They're waiting. They know the time is near. They know. I mean, look at the Hopi prophecy, right? It says that we're in the 4th world. We're getting ready to enter the 5th. What does that mean? Every time the world changes, man needs these things. When you look at the history here, when you look at the Earth's history, and you look at the Native American myths, every time the Earth starts over again, because mankind has messed up before, every time the world changes, these things are here to guide man, to help man, or are they to mislead man and make them feel that we need these things to survive, so we worship these things as God? Because if one comes down right now and lands on the White House lawn, sure, it's going to be great. It'll be headline news for about 3 or 4 days. But then everything will start going back to normal. Why? Because we do not need them yet. They are waiting for man to need them. So what if there's a war, right? And 2/3 of the earth is destroyed, as some of these prophecies talk about, right? No food, no water, air is polluted, but yet they see the Phoenix lights, right? Quick, grab a camera. There's the Phoenix lights. in our time of need. And one comes down and he shapeshifts, right? Just like what the Petroglyphs are talking about, right? He changes into a man, right? And he lands on this mountain and he says, look what I can do, man. I can clean up the water. I can clean up the air. I can give you food. I'm the one you've been waiting for 2.5, almost 3,000 years. I'm here. Worship me. Look what I'm a miracle worker, dude. Look what I can do. I can light. I can fly. I can fly in the sky. I have magic. I have power. But is this the demon? Is this the false prophet? And that's what these petroglyphs are talking about. These petroglyphs are explaining that when these people first arrived here, that these demons, these Nephilim, misled these people into thinking that they were something that they weren't. And this is the reason why the government isn't talking about this. If these things were friendly and nice, yeah, I think the government would come clean on this. Oh yeah, sure, those guys are friendly, man. They're really cool. They helped us out in the past. But they're not. They know there's something here. They've been watching them for at least 80 years now, maybe longer. Okay, they know the history. They know what the Native Americans say about this. I mean, we should really, pay attention to the Native Americans, because why? They were here first. They should know. So they should know what they're talking about. It's not some crazy myth. It's not some Indian up there on peyote tripping when he's talking to the spirits, dude. No, man. He's telling us a story. He's not out there carving graffiti, dude. He's telling us a story. It's meant for generation upon generation to understand what is in our world. And a lot of people think, well, they come from they come from Pluto, or they're coming from Alpha Centauri. I'm going to give you another secret. Heads up, this is their world too. They have never left. They have always been here, hiding and dormant until the time of need when they're needed once again. And look, every time man seems to go to war, that's when you really start to see these things. I mean, look at the Foo Fighters in World War II, right? Mm-hmm. They're chasing these red lights all over the skies. They, for 30 to 60 years later, they thought that it was the enemy ship. When finally they all gained forces together and they said, nope, it wasn't mine. They're like, nope, it wasn't mine. And who was it? It was Reagan, dude. Reagan came out there and said, what if there was something outside of our planet that we would have to join forces with, right, as a nation, as a world, because of something from outer space, right? But in my opinion, in looking at these things and studying them and looking at the history, it's not so much outer space, it's inner space, all right? Mm-hmm. And this is when it's talking about the spirals and the doorways. Okay, so then, are you still with me?
Mm-hmm. Yep, right here.
Okay. So the story goes that they're going down into the underworld. The Mayans go into the underworld. The Ho'okami spirits over here going down into the underworld, right? But let's look at this as a scientific way. Let's consider the theory here. So, what did I say at the beginning? This mountain was created by a fault line. And over there on the east side of South Mountain on Ray Road, there's a major electrical power plant bored down into that fault line to generate the power here in Phoenix. Some of the power, not all of it, but some of it. And when that power plant was turned on in summer of 2004, it attracted these entities. It was like an intergalactic gas station for these lights, man. They were hanging right over that power plant, absorbing that energy. As a matter of fact, it took down a whole grid. The whole grid went down that summer. They had to pull in a whole new grid from California on a 24-wheeler that took almost a month to get here. Now, I have seen photographs of these lights over nuclear facilities, and I just have a feeling everything seems to be like kind of a coincidence, right? I mean, why did the news come out and say that the Palo Verde nuclear power plant was going to shut down and they're going to turn on all these electrical power plants for the summer of 2004? And when they did, it attracted these lights to that area, right? So they're sucking up the power. Who's paying for that? We are. they're running haywire on that electricity, dude. They're absorbing that energy big time, you know. And
we
they
have to ask though,
so much.
why did they build it? Why did they build the facility on the fault line to begin with? That's so strange to me. And they do it often.
Well, I'm not talking about the nuclear power plant. That's not. I'm talking about the electrical power plant. The nuclear power plant, the Palo Verde power plant. That's like what 50, maybe a lot longer. It's further than that. It's on the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona. It's a major nuclear power plant that it powers up Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, a couple other states, I believe. But in the summer of 2004, they announced that they're going to shut down that nuclear facility for maintenance, right? And they're going to turn on these electrical power plants here in the valley for the summer. And when they attracted these Phoenix lights to that area, I believe that it drove so much energy that it shut down the grid. And so I think someone knew that if these lights were going to hang around that power plant, that it could cause a core meltdown, and that would be catastrophic. So just to be on the safe side, they better shut it down because they knew these lights were back in town, and they knew what they were after. So we're going to feed them by turning on the electrical power plant so nothing catastrophic will happen. And that's basically, in my mindset, all the evidence is pointing in that direction, is what really happened that summer of 2004. So when they say that they're going down into the underworld, they're actually going down into the fault lines. And so we're going back to like, oh my God, how can a spaceship get into a little crack, right? Well, it didn't take me long to understand that these things aren't crap, that these things are alive, and I understand what the Native Americans are saying by spirit. Because when they come down out of the sky, they're solid, right? They're shape-shifting, they're changing colors sometimes, right? When they're coming across the mountain, all of a sudden they're like a ghost. You can see through them. And then all of a sudden they absorb themselves into the rock. I have filmed this many, many times of these entities coming down, going into the mountain, coming out of the mountain, going back into the mountain, going across the mountain, going inside the mountain. That is what's going on here. A lot of people can't handle this, but a lot of people are just now trying to understand this because now I'm getting videos from like all over the world. They're seeing the same things, the flying serpents, the flying orbs. They're filming things coming and going from the mountains. They're identifying the mountains now because that's the source. Every time somebody asks me how to see a UFO, I go, well, first find out everything you can about the land that you live on. See what the Native Americans say about it. See if you find any mountains that have spirals on it. That's the source. Because these things are attracted to these fault lines, to these natural energy spots around the Earth. And they follow the seasons. I mean, look at Stonehenge, right? And look at some of these other archaeology finds where the morning equinox, right? And these prehistoric people, they would build, buildings or, stones or line petroglyphs with the morning equinox, right? And so the archaeologists, they're telling us, well, it's just telling the native people that it's time to plant corn. It's time to season. Bull crap, man. That has nothing to do with planting corn. It has everything to do with seeing these spirits in the sky. Because these petroglyphs are aligned to the equinox and the solstice for a reason. And it's really neat because, like in my book, I show a lot of examples of this. When the sun rises, they put a huge boulder on top of this other boulder, right, oriented towards the east. And they carve these spirals on it, and they carve these other, what the archaeologists like to call them anthropomorphs, these shape-shifting entities, these beings, right? Not animals, but resemble animals, but they're not animals. They're kind of crazy drawings. They call them anthropomorphs. They're morphine. They're changing shapes, right? And so when the sun comes up over that hill, over that rock, right? As the sun goes to the sky, casts a shadow on the first boulder on top of this other boulder, and it casts a shadow down. Now, if there's a spiral there, it'll cut through that spiral, right? By the time it's over with, it takes about maybe an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and then around noontime, 1 o'clock, that's when the shadow will cut through that spiral and go into the rock. It's going into the doorway, right? And then there's a lot of petroglyphs out there. Man, these people were smart. I don't know how they were able to do this, but I found at least, 4 examples of when the equinox and the solstice shadows occur on these rocks. Sometimes, man, it's a profile of a Native American, man, and he's in full headdress attire, dude. He's got the feathers. He's got a headdress on. There's even one out there resembling a Mayan face. Now, how the heck did these people do that, dude? You know, I mean, this is only one time. I mean, maybe 2 times, 3 times, if that, before the sun gets out of alignment. You know, before you would have to wait for the next following year to carve a little here, to carve a little there, to make sure the sun aligns up perfectly with these rocks over here, to make this perfect shadow face of an Indian. Dude, that's crazy. How the hell did they do that? But they did it, you know, and that's exactly how smart these people were.
Right.
So, and within almost 3 years of watching these things coming and going from the mountain, that's when it hit me. It dawned on me. You know, because the first year, they came on certain months, certain seasons, and then they were gone certain months, certain seasons. And then they would come back in heavy loads, right? And then the equinox would happen, or the solstice would happen, or the autumn, you know, things like that would happen. And so a little bit would be here, maybe they're gone. Okay, and that was cool. I documented all that, right? And then when it happened, it repeated itself the following year, the same month, you know, the same season. And then it repeated itself a 3rd year. Oh, my God. That was it. That was the secret. They follow this. They follow the energy. When the sun aligns with these natural energy spots around the globe, it opens up these doorways on the earth, these fault lines, these volcanoes, natural energy sources, man-made energy sources, nuclear facilities, right? When the sun aligns perfectly with these fault line doors, these ley line doors, it opens up and it attracts these entities to that spot. And the natives say they're going to the underworld. The scientific approach to this, they're going down into the fault line. They're going down into the energy spot. Mm-hmm. And why are they lighting up? A lot of people ask me, why are these spaceships, man, they need lights? Do they need to see in space? No, that has nothing to do with it. When we see these lights out there, like look at the Phoenix lights, right? 7, 8, 9 lights are out there, maybe 10. People thought it was a spaceship. Each light is the entity. When you see 5 lights out there, you're looking at 5 living entities, right? They're intelligent. They know who's watching. They know who's not watching. And they're on a mission. They're there to absorb the energy. All right, let's look at the lightning bug. Let's look at the firefly, right? They light up, right? Because it's them. That's exactly what these entities are. That's exactly what these entities do. They light up, especially when they're full of energy. So you see this light going across the sky. He just came from a gas station. He's on his way to another gas station, man. He just came out of one mountain with full of energy, and now he's headed to another mountain full of energy. And this is the reason why we see him going across our skies, is because they're on a mission. They're heading to another energy spot. And then when the equinox and the solstice comes back again, the sun is in another place of the earth, another location, and so they're following the sun, dude. They're following the seasons. That's why, because a lot of people around the world are like, man, the UFOs are gone. Why? And I'm like, well, dude, we just had the summer solstice, man. You know, wait a couple more months. They'll be back. Boom, here they come, you know. So that's the secret. It's the energy. It's the fault lines. It's the sun. It's the position of everything. It's the timing. And once you figure out this pattern, then you'll be able to know how to see these things more often. You'll understand the source, which is mountains, is fault lines. I mean, some of these oceans, some of these lakes, dude, their fault lines created some of this stuff, right? And we see these lights coming and going from the water. They call them, what, UFOs? Underwater UFOs? Underwater submerged UFOs? So these lights are going to the fault lines, dude. They're going to the energy.
Yeah, makes sense. No doubt. So do you think the sightings have increased or decreased for the past few months since all this weird started with the lockdown and all that? Have you noticed a change?
Yeah, I have. But I just think, it's interesting because, like, another friend of mine, he lives on the other side of the world. He's asked me, has the UFO activity slowed down in Arizona because they have over there, and yeah, it has slowed down. But I really think that things are going to start to pick up again in August. So this is just the beginning, So I think we need to wait. It's kind of early to tell yet, So let's let this year play out. But it's really a pattern. This pattern has been going on for thousands of years. The Native Americans knew about it. That's why they carved the equinox and the solstice. They're explaining on where to see them, how to see them, when to see them, what to look for,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in August, and that's when they're going to really start to come back. And another thing too, I'd like to bring up that I discovered. So there's like these lizard men, right? That are carved out there,
Mm-hmm.
and they have these circular bellies, right? They have these circular bellies, like an orb, right? And watching these things and seeing what they do because they shapeshift, I believe when we're looking at what they like to say a lizard man, and he's got this circular belly, that is the orb, that is the light that we see in the skies today, and it's morphing, it's changing, it's growing arms, it's growing legs, it's growing a head, it's growing a tail. Actually, that's not really a tail. That's that line I was telling you about, and how they come down and they pick things up, whether it's animals or people. There's tons of petroglyphs out there. They're picking up deers, right? They're picking up coyotes, right? They're picking up people. So that's not a tail. That's a line. That's where a lot of people think, oh my God, it's a balloon because it's got a string. That's not a string, dude. That's a line. That's a scary line, dude. Look what the petroglyphs say. The petroglyphs talks about that line, dude. That's not a string, okay? It's not balloons, right? Mm-hmm. Let's not be stupid. Let's get out of third grade. We all know what balloons look like in the sky, all right? So when you see something up there and it's morphing, it's changing colors, right? And this line is coming down from it. Come on, it's not a balloon. It's not a spaceship, Let's think, people. Let's put our brains together. Let's get out of third grade and let's understand what's going on in our skies. And not just take the word of someone trying to sell you a movie ticket or a book, without any proof. We must have proof. We must have credible evidence. Petroglyphs talk about this. Scrolls that have been written 3,000 to 7,000 years ago talk about this. Right? So what do they have to gain? Are they into sci-fi fiction back then? I don't think so, man. This is what they wanted people to believe. This is what they wanted people to understand because it was here. They're telling us that these things have always been here with us.
It makes sense. And so, you said they came from above and below, which is very interesting, of course, so it wasn't just one direction.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Well, because, in Genesis 6, it says these things were cast down, right? And the people back then worshiped these things as gods, right? So they cast them down to the earth, and it's the fault lines, and a lot of scholars say the bottomless pit, right? Mm-hmm. And the key of the bottomless pit has been opened, right? Because it's been closed for a long time, and then all of a sudden now we're starting to see them again, right? Because that bottomless pit has been opened, the key has been turned. These things are coming out now. Yep. And even the Anunnaki, their scrolls say that some stayed and some left. Now, it was man that put in that thing in between where it says, when you see the documentations on the Sci-Fi Channel or the History Channel, when they're talking about the Anunnaki, and you see them leaving in ships, that's bullcrap, man. They just left. They're supernatural. What are they? Angels? Could be, right? Because a lot of the biblical scrolls talks about these beings, right? And they're shape shifting, and sometimes they look like people, right? And the people back then didn't understand this. They called them angels, right? Nephilim, things like that.
Yep.
So I believe that the ones that we're seeing here today are the ones that were left behind, the ones that got stuck behind, actually, the ones that got trapped in the bottomless pit, because the other ones, they escaped. They got out of here. Where they went, I don't know. Some say Planet X, soon to return. Could be possible. Every 3,500 years, I guess it is. So that's always possible. But again, we don't need them yet. So as soon as something catastrophic happens, then that's when all the information that everybody wanted to know will come into play, and they will soon realize that they're not here to help us, man. They're here to manipulate us again. They're here to have us worship them again. But you know what? There does seem to be some good ones, if I have time to talk about this. Because there are petroglyphs out here on the mountains, right, on Phoenix, that describes another race, okay? And it does show that these Indians went to war with these flying serpents and these orbs in the sky. They're shooting bows and arrows. Look at my Facebook, or look at my website. There's a petroglyph, and there's an Indian there, and he's shooting an arrow up at a flying snake. He's shooting arrows at an orb and other flying serpents. And there's this other race of beings I've kind of noticed. It's very hard to find, but he's there, all right? And when you find him, when you see him, he's got 4 arms, and he's got this, staff, this weapon, right? And it's shooting up at a half-man, half-serpent guy in the sky. He's shooting at a flying serpent, Quetzalcoatl, half-man, half-serpent, flying guy, and he's shooting at him. Now, this is interesting, too, because when you look at the Vietnamese, when you understand the India legend, when you look at the Vietnamese, right, it says that there was a war between the good ones and the bad ones. And mankind was their prize. Well, obviously, the good ones won because, we're here today and we're not slaves anymore. We're not slaves to these beings anymore, right? We're free from this. But the legend goes on to say that they buried their weapons on certain spots around the earth because they know eventually they're going to have to come back to earth and reuse these weapons to fight off these entities, these serpent things again. And so when we look at that, look at the Vietnamese and that interpretation of India, and then we go out there and we see it on the rocks, dude, and it's talking about the same stuff, that gets pretty intense. That's like, oh my God, how are people, this is interesting too, how people from way across on the other side of the planet are describing, describing pyramids and flying serpents and red dots. Look at the Egyptians, these red dots behind their heads, look at all that stuff, the shape-shifting animals of the Egyptians, the pyramids, all right? And then we have the people over here on this side of the world doing pretty much the exact same thing. The Mayans are building pyramids. They're talking about shape-shifting snakes, all right? Quetzalcoatl, they're talking about these reptiles. They're worshiping monkeys. And all these are worshiping animals, like bulls and stuff like that, dude. Why? How is that possible? How are two advanced civilizations on each side of the world who have no contact with each other whatsoever, but yet they're doing the same exact thing? It must have some kind of influence that they're seeing in the sky. They must have something that came down and taught these people how to do it, And that's the reason why they all came up missing pretty much all at the same time.
Right.
They all came up missing.
And Jeff, hang on for a second here. We have a question from someone over here. Bruce McDonald had a question for you. And he was asking why abductees always describe being in a ship, please.
I can't speak for them because I wasn't there. And I'm only going on what I can prove. So I can't prove anything about what anybody else says. I think until we get something off a ship, that's pretty credible if we can find something off a ship. But like I said, I'm not in their shoes. I have no idea. I've never experienced that before. I can't find any proof of that, so...
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
well, you're
that's
honest.
a good question.
That's good.
I'm sorry, I can't
great.
answer it because I don't know.
I just wanted to make sure I asked you for them. That's good. That's fine. Okay.
Yeah, I only talk about what I discovered, what I can prove, and the petroglyphs and the things in the sky that we're seeing, and I mean, I could have seen like at least two things in the sky that could resemble a craft. Okay, so my first experience was I was living in upstate New York during 9/11. And when the towers fell, I lived about 150 miles away, and there was a no-fly zone going on at the time. And I always told my son, look, I was a single dad, and I always told my son, look, there's things in the sky. If you ever see a UFO, come and tell me. Well, about 3 days after the towers fell, my son comes running up from the window from outside, and he's like, Dad, a UFO. So I go running out and I look with him and his friend, and it looked like a set of jacks. Like the game Jacks, where the kids they bounce the ball on the ground and they pick up the jacks with their hands, right? It was 4 silver spheres. They were connected together, going counterclockwise. Was that a ship? Looked like it to me. Was it an entity? Could have been. I don't know what it was, but it was cool. It was about 1,000 feet above our head, going counterclockwise. My son's friend said, "Oh, that's probably just an airplane or something." And I'm like telling the kid, "No, that is not an airplane. I have no clue what the hell that thing is, man. Keep watching it." It flew over our apartment, over our heads, and then it went over to some trees, and then something caught my eye to the right of it, and it looked like another silver orb, and it had this tail, and it was going to connect with the jacks, and the trees got in the way. And every day before school and after school, I walked the kids to school, and I'd always tell them, look, don't forget, what you saw. That was something. That wasn't an airplane. That wasn't something from NASA or anything like that. I mean, that was something. You don't ever forget what you saw,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah,
And
definitely.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, before we're going to have about 15 minutes plus or minus for the show. I just want to make sure everybody's asking for your website. You said you don't have a website?
Well, I do, and it's complicated.
I put down your Facebook page in Petroglyphs of the Sky.
Yeah, and right under my profile picture, you can see the link to it. And from there, you'll have to copy and paste it in your browser. But if you go to my YouTube channel, Phoenix Light Petroglyphs in the Sky, all my videos have direct links to my website. It's all right there. But Facebook has unfortunately blocked my website, and so I am not allowed to advertise my website on Facebook or any social media, unfortunately. So that's the way that goes. Trying to cover up the truth, right?
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, from there you can find out where to get my book, Barnes & Noble, eBay, and so it's called The Phoenix Light Petroglyphs in the Sky, Landscape for the Spirits, True Stories, Myths, Legends, and UFOs over Phoenix. Now, this is not just a regular, everyday UFO book. Some people will get it, some people won't. This is 15 years of research into this book. Lots of photographs, okay? Lots of petroglyphs. Lots of light and shadow seasons, okay? It explains on the light and shadows. It explains the seasons. It explains what the Phoenix Lights are, right? You have to read it, man. You have to dig into it to really understand what's going on. Like I said before, this is not for everybody, all right? This is, a different kind of book that goes into the history of Phoenix. It starts off in the beginning, okay? And it takes you through this magical journey, right? And on through this journey, you learn about the petroglyphs. You learn about what these things really are in the sky. You see petroglyphs and the stories and what the petroglyphs are talking about, how to understand these petroglyphs. All right, so it's not a regular UFO book, but it does explain, if you read it closely, what the Phoenix Lights is, what the Native Americans say they are, what we can verify, and it's all taken through my years of history walking on that mountain, taking the photographs, watching the seasons, watching the mountains for so many years, watching these things coming and going from the mountains, finding all this information in the Phoenix Library, and putting all this information into one book, and that's what it came out with. Now, it took me 5 years to get this thing published because a lot of publishers, they just wanted to either rewrite it, and I'm like, no, dude, it is written a certain way. I'm sorry if you don't get it, okay, but this is it. Some people will. Some people will get it. I'm sorry if the main character died, but he died for a reason, okay? There's a consequence. Everything you do, there's a consequence. He was told not to do something, but he did it anyway. And what happened? So you have to understand the book. You have to understand what's going on here. And if you can't get to South Mountain, if you can't get to the Valley of the Sun on your own, then I bring it to you through my book, through the photographs of the petroglyphs, through the history of Phoenix, Arizona, talking about the lights, talking about the things that we see in the skies today. So it's great.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you, Grog, for what you just sent me. I think I'm looking at something here. So I found some information for you anyways, but go ahead. I digress.
Well, does he have a question? I'm open.
No, he didn't have a question. They were trying to find your website, and they did get some information for you. And it looks like I just found a link that says P9 Hosting Productions. It has Petroglyphs in the Sky, so it has your information on here. So I'm going to send it over to you. Is that it? Okay, great.
Thank
you.
Yeah,
and
that's
Grog
it.
posted that. He's on it over in the chat room. So very cool. Yeah. It's all well done. Like I said, your book's awesome. And yeah, you don't want to rewrite it. It's your signature in there.
Yeah, you can't rewrite it, because, like I said, it wasn't me writing it. It was all the information that I was gathering writing it. Was it a higher power, controlling the pen, putting me to, telling me what to write? I don't know. Was it the Great Spirit? I don't know. But, as soon as I gathered all this information, I knew that there was a story here. I knew I had to get it out. And I had to tell it in such a way, hopefully, that, some people will understand it, hopefully. And if not, you will. It might take people another 20 to 30 years to really understand what's going on here. And that's okay, because I feel, and all these cable TV shows who don't want to talk to me anymore feel that I'm way ahead of all these other ufologists. I'm into something that hasn't been talked about in 80 years, and they're still talking about spaceships and craft, and they don't really want to look at this way of thinking about things. One is because, here we go, it's not about religion, it's about these scrolls, okay? Let's take religion out of the Bible and look at this book as a type of history of the world. And when you do that, it tells us exactly what these things are, what they were doing with us, who is good, who is bad, all right? And look at the biblical archaeology and look at all the stuff that they're finding. They are verifying all the stuff that's written in that book. And even still, let's look at the Sumerian text. Let's look at the Anunnaki. The exact same stories we're reading in those texts are found on the petroglyphs from the mountains around the Valley of the Sun and also around these other petroglyph sites around the world. And not all petroglyphs are talking about these spirits. Now, the mountains that are sacred are the ones that have the spirals on them. Okay, that's the main thing you want to look for is spirals. And then the anthropomorphs, like beings that are shape-shifting. They look like animals, but they don't look like animals. One giveaway is their feet are in opposite directions. That's how you know that's an anthropomorph. That's a supernatural being. Okay, it's a living creature, if you will. It's not a craft. It's not a regular animal. It's an anthropomorph. It's a shape-shifting entity. All right, so those are the petroglyphs that you're looking for that are the mountains that are sacred. Now, there's other mountains out there that have petroglyph carvings on them, but a lot of them are just like ceremonies, talking about kachinas, talking about hunting, And then there are glyphs out there where the Indian is just simply carving out a deer, eating some grass. Hey, why not? You know what I'm saying? He's kicking back, he's carving this deer, eating some grass, and there's some butterflies around. Sure, why not? So the main one, the source, the heart of where this UFO activity can be found at are mountains with fault lines and spirals on them. Investigate your land. Investigate the history. Find out what the Native Americans say. And if they say anything about anything to do with a sacred mountain, a spirit mountain, that's the source. That is where to start looking for these things. Don't give up. At least spend 2 years out there. I know it's a long time, but you have to have full dedication to this. That's what I did. I put full dedication into this work. This is how I found out all this information. All right? You have to be there all the time. Just because you don't see anything, I get a lot of people saying, oh, man, I went up the South Mountain. I didn't see anything. Okay, what time did you go? What season did you go? What area did you go? Because it's the east side, dude. Oh, I was on the west side. Well, you know what? That east side's a lot older than the west side, all right? There's more petroglyphs on the east side than the west for a reason, okay? Because that's where the activity is on the east, not the west, all right? So you have to understand all this. And I didn't have any of this. I learned all this information on my own, all hit and miss, right? And that's what you have to do, all right? That's why I say at least spend 2 years out there watching this mountain with spirals on it. Watch in the mornings. They love the morning time. Sometimes you can see them in the afternoon around lunchtime, but then again, they really start to heavily come back around 4 to 5:30, at least here in Phoenix. 5:30 was the major time where you would see these things coming or leaving South Mountain. Could be the same in your part of the world also. So anybody who is into this and is willing to dedicate at least two years of their life into researching these spots, let me know what your discoveries are. Contact me. Let me know what you discovered, because if that mountain is active, then you will see them. Have a camera ready. I always tell people, no, don't use your cell phone. Make sure you have a video camera with you at all times. I don't care. Cell phones, you just can't get the distance. You can't zoom in on them very well. And another thing, too, is I get a lot of videos where they show these lights, right? But all of a sudden, the videos stop. It's for something to be credible, for at least people like myself to analyze, to make sure it's not a hoax, you have to make sure you film the damn thing leaving the sky. Just don't cut it off in the middle. Because, these planes are deceiving. These airplanes at night are deceiving. There's headlights on these airplanes, right? And if the airplane is coming right at you, it looks like just a light in the sky, and it's not moving. But as soon as that airplane turns, then you can see it start to blink, right? You'll see the anti-collision lights. And that's a lot of what these people are doing. They're stopping their videos right when the airplane turns, so you don't know it's an airplane. So there's a lot of hoax out there. You have to be careful, unfortunately. And that's just not the way it should be, but it is. And there's, like I said, there's a lot of politics in this. I mean, while Giorgio was trying to learn how to comb his hair, I'm up there on the mountains finding out what the Phoenix Lights is. So...
And you've done an awesome job. You're not still doing any tours anymore, right? Or are you going to be doing that again at some point?
I will be. I will be doing tours. It's kind of hot right now, so. But if anybody contacts me, I can make an appointment and we can go down there and we can do a tour.
Awesome.
Some of these. Matter of fact, I'm going to announce here on the show. I have been announcing it on my own show. You can follow me. I do my own shows on my Facebook page, and I upload the videos to my YouTube page. And I talk about these UFOs, and I show UFOs. I talk about the petroglyphs, and I encourage people to contact me and let me see their UFOs and their petroglyphs. And so I forgot where I was going with this.
Well, that's okay. You have something new, and we only have a minute or two left in the illusion of space and time. So go ahead.
Okay. And so there's a new UFO show coming out on the Travel Channel, and they're going to be using some of my UFO videos. And also, this one guy contacted me. He's making a commercial of aerial phenomenon. And we're going to be doing an interview, and I'll be on his show, on the cable show. I think it's a Travel Channel or the History Channel. But anyway, he asked me to use a couple of my videos for his commercial. So look for that. So
nice.
My stuff is out there, and tons of cable stuff is starting to come back my way because more stuff has become incredible. I have not once came back on anything that I've been saying for the last, 15 to almost 20 years now. So I have always said I've never turned back about anything. And now all these, researchers are just starting to look at my, research and say, wait a minute, Jeff Woolwine said that, 10 years ago.
That's right.
Jeff Woolwine, look at Skinwalker Ranch, right? So I've been talking about the energy and the fault lines and how these UFOs attract the fault line. Well, Skinwalker Ranch, they launched these rockets up. Season 1, Episode 4. They launched these rockets up with these sensors, checking the energy up in the sky. And when they did, there was a light orb in the sky.
I think we're out of time, Fred. What a wonderful show. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been awesome. Everybody loves you in chat. Everybody, thanks for tuning in tonight. And stay tuned for Shiny Side Out with David Thunder and Mickey coming up to sell you on for the night coming down under with their awesome show. We'll be talking Ancient Tech Part 15. Tune in. And thank you again, everybody. Thanks again, Jeff. Fabulous show.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you for listening to Revolution